I have all my fabric strips organized how I want them here. I'm getting ready to start a fabric basket, and I'm using the same process that I do when I make my fabric rugs by using these jelly roll strips. So you can cut your own material, but I'm using a jelly roll bundle here. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to join all my strips together. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to sew at a diagonal. I want to sew all of my strips together to get one big long strip of fabric. And then after I sew them together, I'm going to go in and I'm going to cut off these triangle ends here like this. So you don't have to sew them at diagonal. You can sew them end to end. This is just how I prefer. I think it makes for a better transition between the fabrics and a little less bulky when it's all folded up. So I'm going to continue on and sew them up. I am using 40-inch long jelly roll fabric. They sell them in different ones. You can get 40 inches or 44 inches. And here I'm showing you how it's going to look with my diagonal sewn. So it opens up nicely with that diagonal across. So when I have my strips all ready, it's going to look like that. And that's just how I like to do it. So now I have my strips that I am sewing here at a quarter seam allowance. That's how I like to do, and I use a magnetic seam guide here. And I'm using this handy little tool down here, and all it's doing is folding my fabric and batting in from the outside in, and then in half again. This is called the Gypsy Tube Maker. There's also the Clover. Once I get to the end, I'm going to leave about 5, 6, 7 inches here, and I'm going to cut it at a tapered end, like at an angle here, just like this. And what this is going to do is going to give me that tapered end for the end of my bowl, which is going to actually be at the top of my bowl when I'm done. So that's about how much fabric I take off. And then I'm going to go in and I'm also going to just snip the batting here just a little bit, just so it's easier to fold up. Also, my fabric is 2.5 inches wide, and so the batting is 2.25 inches wide. So here, I like to end it here so I can flip up the bottom at the end there to get a nice finish. And all I'm going to do is go in here and I'm just going to roll it in and fold it in, however way you can do it. It's a little tricky sometimes depending on the fabric, just so that I can get a nice finished edge and continue on sewing to the end. So that's all I'm doing here is just getting it to tuck in, and you can see how you get the nice tapered end here. And then I'm going to continue sewing on all the way down. You can even cut at a longer angle if you'd want. That'd give it more of a longer tapered in, but this is just how I've come to do it. I think it looks all right this way. And so see, you can see down here, I'm tucking it all in so that the fabric is nice and folded. So when I sew it, it's all nice and neat. So you may want to use pins or maybe some little clips to get it to sit, maybe even iron it, whatever works for you. So I have it all ready here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and finish sewing it up, and that's going to give me the end for my bowl. So just pay attention to which is going to be your beginning and your end with these tubes. I find that doing the tapered end right now is just easier because once you get the bowl made or the basket, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get that material how you want it. And this just makes for a nicer finished edge compared to how I do my rugs. So I've been using the basket method. I have absolutely loved this. I just let my strips fall into there and then I bring it over and I am ready to go and use them. They don't get tangled. It's pretty nice. With this basket, I'm starting with a 10-inch start. So what you want to do is you want to measure out from the beginning, and then you're going to flip your fabric like this. And I make these triangle flaps the same way that I make my fabric rugs. And then I fold back down to get it to go down here. Now I am doing it different than how I do my rugs. I'm doing it with the seam in instead of out. And you always want the fabric strip on the right side to be hanging like that. That's how it's going to feed into your machine and have it on the left side. So I'm going to sew across the strap, that flap there, that triangle flap, all the way down, and then I'm going to create another triangle flap here by folding the fabric like this so that I can have my path to sew the bottom of my basket. So you can pin it before, or you can just wait till you get to this end. I just have been waiting now because the pins usually pop out. So I'm folding it like this. And this is my second turn here with my second triangle flap that I use, the same method that I do with my rugs and everything like that for my ovals. Even I actually do this for my circles too, for my rugs. So I'm sewing over the flap like this, and then I'm ready to sew down the path. And now this is going to give me my base to the basket, your bottom. And that's what we're working on right now, is the base to the basket. So I'm going to continue sewing all the way down here, and then it's the fun part, is getting the material to bunch around this end, which I have a difficult time doing seam in. If you sew your tubes with the down the middle instead of on the side like I am, it might be easier to bend and move the fabric. I've never done it that way, but I'm guessing that it would. So you can see how it's a little bit more stiff here when I try to get it to bunch up and stuff, and that's because I have my seam right there. So I'm just going to work the fabric and get it how I want, trying to do the best I can to get it to bunch up and lay nice and flat so that I can sew around here to get my base for my basket. You really want to take your time as you're going around these corners, making sure that you're getting both sides of the fabric. You don't want that fabric to overlap. It's just going to sit gently next to it so you can get your zigzag stitch to go on both sides. I am using setting 5 and 2.5 on my machine for the zigzag. I am sewing in real time right now, so you can just see how I am using the fabric here and moving it and how it works. I am using a walking foot, and I find that that helps a lot with these projects. So I start by pinning right here when I get down to the end, and then I work with the fabric and try to get it to bend around. You want a nice curved outside, so that way when you keep building it, it's going to lay as flat as possible. You may need to use more pins, or you don't even have to use pins, but this is just helping you keep that fabric in place so that you can sew. And also I don't have it on high heat, and use my mini iron here just to kind of press it to keep it all where I want it to. I definitely have found that working with the seam on the inside here is a lot more difficult to get the fabric to lay. So if you were sewing these tubes with sewing them together down the middle, I think that'd be a lot easier to make these. But I just personally haven't tried. I get stuck, doing how I like doing things, and then that's just how I do it. So I'm doing this with the seam in the inside, which I think many people like doing. I'm just not sure how they do it if they do it with the 1/4 inch. Everybody does everything different, You gotta find what works for you. So I'm going to continue sewing on, and I'm going to do the ends here, keep pinning and bunching them up, getting them to lay flat, iron them as needed, moving that material around. These ends can really be a pain, especially when you're first starting out. So I know it's going to get frustrating. Use as many pins and iron as much as you need to. Just trying your best, you know what I mean? We all have been there. Even now still I get frustrated with doing the fabric. Also, when I'm doing these ends, sometimes I like to put my needle down and lift my foot up and pivot it. You may find that that helps for you depending on how that material is sitting in there, just to get around those bends nice and neat. I sometimes do that. So all you're going to do is keep doing this process. I just wanted to show you real time so you can really see what I'm doing and how I'm moving that fabric and how it's coming together. This is going to be the base of my basket. As it starts getting a little bigger, you don't have to bunch as much around the corners, so you just kind of see as you go. Like, you can tell when you go and you curve this around like that, you can just see how the fabric is moving and how much it needs to bend based on how you want to see that outside curve with the fabric. You see here on the end there, that's what you're aiming for, is that nice round edge. So you need to have that fabric on the inside bunched up so that you can get that nice flat edge on the side. I hope that makes sense. I try my best to explain these things, and then sometimes as I'm doing it, my brain goes, oh my goodness. So I hope I am explaining well for you guys. Alrighty, now I have my base ready. So I used the first 2 strips that I started with down here as my start, and then I count 4 strips over on this side and 4 strips over on that side. And that's going to be my base. After those 4, then I'm going to go around here and I'm going to lift it up. And I will show you exactly what I mean by lifting it up. So once you get those 4 strips, that's going to be my base, and then I'm going to continue going around the corner here and that's going to be the start of my walls to build my basket. So I continue on here, and then so this is going to be technically the 5th row over, and then once I get over past the end here is when I'm going to lift up. So I'm just going to go a little bit more, and then I'm going to take the fabric here on the left, and I'm going to lift it up. So here I go, and I'm going to flop it up. There we go. So see how I'm doing this? I'm going to rest it right against my machine, and I'm going to continue sewing. Now what this is going to do, it's going to start building the walls to this basket. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to go on and continue doing it. Now because this is an oval, it is a little difficult to get around these ends. So holding on to it with your left hand gets a little tricky. So you just got to try doing your best holding it and getting that fabric to go in here. You want to try being as gentle as possible, not trying to push that fabric through, or you're going to get uneven stitches and they're just going to start getting a little sloppy. So just take your time, go as slow as you need to, and get that fabric to go around like this. And then continue on, making sure that your base is up flat against your machine like how I have it folded here. I am sewing in real time so that you guys can see exactly what's going on here. Now, I will mention that the bigger these baskets go, these are just made with fabric and batting, so they will start to get flimsy. Those edges aren't going to be as stable. So what I did with this one was I knew I wanted to have a little bit less of a flare on it. So I took that material here on the left, and I'm using my pointer, and I'm trying to bunch it up, and then bring my thumb in here. Now, I know it's far away, but you can kind of see how that left strip I am bunching up a little. And I will say this is extremely difficult because when I first started doing it, I was pushing the fabric through, and you do not want to do that. You just want to try bunching it up and then letting it feed through. Now I was doing that mostly on the ends to kind of give it more stabilization, and I did find that that helps a lot to help build the walls up and not be as flimsy and wide. So again, when I'm coming here, I'm squishing up the fabric. You can see right in here, and I'm only doing it on the left side, just so that I can get it to scrunch up more, so that way it's more firm and not flared out. Because when you make these, the larger it gets, the more flared out it's going to get too. So just bunch it up like that, and then continue sewing. And you want your strips right next to each other, not overlapping. That strip on the right, you want to have enough slack so that it's not super tight, and you're just going to adjust it as needed. And then just take your time and just kind of squish that fabric up a little bit here and there. And I did do it a little bit on the long ends as well. I think with these, it's just going to be a trial and error to see what works for you and how the fabric is moving and building as you make them. So now I've gone quite a little ways, and I have a lot more of the basket. It's getting a lot harder to manage, but these are very durable, so just hold on to that fabric and just try to guide it as gently as possible as you're sewing it around. After about the 5th row or so, I didn't scrunch as much anymore. I didn't bother. I just went ahead and went for it. So you really got to just do your best to hold this big basket going on here so that you can evenly feed the fabric through the machine so that your zigzag stitch gets on both sides of those tubes there connecting them. So here is a close up of it, and you can see just taking my time, trying not to push it or pull it or move it, you know. And I'm doing a little bit more scrunching here just to show you how it looks. I scrunched it up, and now I'm just letting it go through with my walking foot. I'm not pushing it. Do not push it because that's what I was doing, and you don't want that. So I do a little bit of a scrunch like this, and then I let the feet pull it through. You kind of get like, the more you do it, you get a feel for how it's moving through, and you can feel that the machine is doing that work. So that's what you're looking for when you're doing this too. You definitely don't want to push it through. You want that machine to do the work for you, and that's going to give you your nice even stitches too. And you can see on the left here, I have my fabric folded up. I got it all smushed. It'll be all right. It's pretty durable. It's folded in half a bunch of times. It's pretty thick, so it's going to be all right. It will bounce back. You can move it how you need to. I promise. It'll be all right. All right, I'm finally to the end, and you can see my tapered little end here, and all I need to do now is just finish sewing it to the end and backstitch a little. Really simple. I love how it is that's all you need to do, because I already did this step. So that's all I need to do here is just finish and get it in there, folding my basket up over on the side, and just moving it so I can get a nice even feed through. All right, I wanted to show what happens when you have a little hole. So you can totally go back in and stitch over it with these. So all I'm doing is I'm going to just push it in there like this and then put it where I need to get that hole that's down in there. And I'm just going to sew over it. So that's pretty simple. So I noticed that when I was making it, and I was like, well, this is a perfect opportunity just to show that you can still go back in and use your machine and sew it. If not, you could always hand stitch it, but I'd rather use my machine. So I'm going in here and I'm just zigzag stitching over that hole just to secure it, because I don't want a little hole in there. I mean, sometimes they're all right, but, you know, that was a fair enough size one. So I'm all done, closing my hole up, and then it's all fixed now. And I'm going to show you here that it's all nice and secure, and I don't have that little hole anymore. So that was a nice, easy fix. Next up, we get to add the handles. So I got mine on Amazon, but I'm having a hard time finding the same ones again. So I will be on the lookout for those. But these are just a fox leather handle, and they're short, and that's what I wanted for this basket. And so next I'm going to be adding them on, and how I have to do this is hand stitching. So I fold my basket in half like this, and that's going to give me a nice spot to work with. And what I'm going to do is figure out how I want them. And I wanted it kind of like this for mine. And then when you get it how you want it and where you want it, you're going to measure in about where it is. So for me, that's right there. And I was like, well, what's a good measurement? I did 5 inches. So I went with 5 inches because that's where I liked it visually. So that's what I was going to go off of. And I was going to do the same on the other side, 5 inches in from the end to make sure that they're nice and even. So these are a little tricky because they're angled. So you got to find like a starting point. Like mine, I went down like 4 spots because there's already the punched holes. And that's what I went off of. So these are a little pain because they're a little floppy and they move. So what I did was I went in and I used a pin to kind of just keep them in place so that they're secure in where I want them for when I go in and start stitching. So I'm using a cotton thread here to stitch, and I have a big size needle. I don't know what size, but it looks like this. And what I did was I measured it out too for you guys. It was I was using around 24 to 26 inches of thread after it's folded. So what I do is I put it in through here, and then I go all the way down so that I have 2 strings here, and then I tie a knot. So that there was 26 inches long here after folded. So I tie my knot, and now I'm ready to sew it. So how I'm doing this is I'm starting at the second hole, and I'm going in and I did not get a close enough picture, but I went in from the second hole here, and I came in, and what I'm doing is going up to the first one, and then I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to do every other one. So I'm going to go in through here, and I'm going to do every other one. And as I'm doing that, I want to make sure that there's a nice tightness on the back and that you're not going to get any loopage as you're going, because that will happen when you're hand stitching. So you really want to pay attention. I use my thumb here to hold that strap down, and then you really got to just be careful. It is tricky doing this and getting the needle to go through the right hole. Do not prick yourself. I have done that. So yeah, so you're just essentially hand stitching this, and you're doing every other one, and I went through and I did every other one, and then when I come all the way to the other side, when I wrap it around to the end, I'm going to go back through and do the every other one. So what that's going to do, it's going to give me a nice secure stitch. So, all right, here's a close-up. It is hard to see because I used white stitching, but you can see here that it's nice and secure. I have it all done over here. I just need to tie and knot it off. So I'm going to continue going on and do that with all the rest. Now I'm doing my other side, and I want the handles to match up. So I'm going to lay it across here and kind of see about where it is, line it up, make sure that it looks the same, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to measure as well too to double check. So I'm going to pin it down, but I'm going to measure it too to double check. As you're doing this as well, you want to pay attention to how far down you're putting these, so you want it to match. I was starting my first stitch about almost all the way down the first tube there, so that you'll want to pay attention to. So also with these, you want to pay attention to the angle, because there's a certain angle to sew them on, and you want it to just look uniform. So just pay attention as you're doing that, or what you're doing with your handles. You can totally use fabric handles. You can make your own out of the same strips. There's many different ways to add handles. This is just how I'm doing it. So then I'm going to double check and just give it a look over and make sure that it looks nice and uniform and matching with the other side. And if I like it, then I'm going to go in and I'm just going to start hand stitching the other side too to secure it. So here is the final look with my handles attached on. I'm so excited about it. Look, it turned out really good. So here you can see what it looks like. It is a little flimsy. It's not like super, super durable, but it's functional, I think, and totally usable. It stands on its own. There's many uses for these. There's tons. I'll list them in the captions for you. So I hope you found this helpful, and you go out and make your different baskets and your bowls. I have another video too to show you how you make these bowls. There's many sizes you can have, so just have fun with it.